Hey, good day everyone. Welcome back to Mr. Stitt's class. Today we're going to be talking about main idea. What's the big idea? So when you read a text in class and your teacher asks you, what is the main idea? How do you go about finding the main idea? Well, we're going to talk about that today, and then we're going to practice some examples today. So let's jump right into it. So, main idea. Main idea is the purpose of the paragraph or text that you are reading. As you're reading, all the information in the paragraph should connect back to the main idea. Good writers don't just pop weird random facts into what they're writing. Everything is focused towards a main idea. Some information is not as important. Now, all the information within an article should be semi-important to the main idea, but there's going to be some things, not every sentence, not every word is going to be important. So when your teacher asks you for the main idea, you have to really use your brain and you have to synthesize the information, analyze the information, and ask yourself what is most important in a text. Good readers always identify key ideas. You shouldn't just be reading aimlessly. You shouldn't just be daydreaming as you read. You should be really reading with purpose and thinking about what are the key ideas that are important in this piece of writing that I'm reading. So, how do you identify main idea? What are some tips that you should use, and what are some things you should be looking for? Well, first of all, you should read the whole text. You shouldn't just read the first paragraph and assume you know what the main idea is. You should read the whole text. Now, the first paragraph might give you some details, but you're going to want to think about the text as a whole. So make sure you read the whole text. Number two, ask yourself, what is the author doing here? Not just what's the author writing about, but what is the author trying to do here? So below the surface, why are they writing? Alright, so number three is a big one, but these are the real strategies that you can use. Think about the topic of a piece. So this is typically one word. So maybe you're reading about robots. You're reading a scientific article about robots. That would be the topic, not the main idea. But then you want to ask yourself, what does the author want me to know about that topic? That is the main idea. So maybe he wants you to know that robots can be helpful to humankind. That would be a great main idea statement. Or maybe he wants you to understand that robots are harming human interactions with each other. That could be another main idea. So, how do you find it? You need to pay attention to the first and last sentence of a piece that you're reading. Typically, that first sentence is going to be what's known as a thesis statement, where the author is putting forward their main point for the article. That can really help. And then vice versa, at the end of a piece, they're going to give you that final conclusion sentence. That could be the main idea. Also, look for words and phrases that are repeated a lot. So in that science article about robots, they're going to probably repeat the phrase robots like 50 million times. So that is a hint that the main idea might be about robots. Last but not least, authors typically use titles, subtitles, images, and graphics. I mean, the article about robots is probably going to be robots, why they're important. So that's a hint to the main idea. They're probably going to put all sorts of pictures and graphics about robots. They're not going to put McDonald's cheeseburgers. They're going to put robots. So all those things help us learn the main idea. All right, so now let's practice an example. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you an example, and I want you to think, what is the main idea of this example? What does the author want you to know about the topic? So here it is. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were the first men to walk on the surface of the moon, but they were not the last. That was Gene Cernan, the last man to step off the lunar surface. In total, there have been 12 men who have walked on the moon, all of whom had done so between 1969 and 1972, which is the most recent non-Michael Jackson moonwalking. So, corny joke aside, let's think about the main idea. So, in your brain, is there a title? That was one of the first tips. Look at a title, subtitle, images, and graphics. So we do not have any of those things. So we can't use those to help us discern the main idea. Well, let's look a little closer. Do we have any repeated words and phrases? Well, for me, I noticed right off the bat, we have some names. So important names. Also, the phrase men was repeated several times. Men, moonwalking. Michael Jackson is a man. Sort of, maybe. Is he? I don't know. But let's think, what else do we read a lot? Moon. So we have men, moon, walking on the moon. So I think the main idea has to do something with men walking on the moon, or important men have traveled to the moon and walked on the moon. So that's how I would think through this main idea example. So let's look and break it down even more. Remember, you must comprehend a text by focusing on the main idea. What's the biggest idea? Well, here were some of those key details, right? Armstrong and Aldrin were the first men on the moon. Cernan was the last man on the moon. 12 men have walked on the moon. So those are those repeated words and phrases that we saw over and over again. So what's the main idea? This paragraph is about moon walkers. So that's an oversimplified version of the main idea, but here's the point. Lots of men were mentioned. Moon was mentioned several times, so repeated words and phrases. The main idea must be about moonwalkers. So, one more thing before you get into your practice examples. I want you to be careful. Test writers may ask you a slightly different version of what is the main idea. They might ask you things like, another good title for this passage would be... So that's just kind of a cutesy way of getting you to understand the main idea. They might also ask, it's just a way of asking for the main idea. So here's what we're going to do now. I'm going to show you 3 practice examples, and what I want you to do after each practice examples, I want you to pause, I want you to think about the main idea. Did you see a title? Did you see repeated words and phrases? What do you think the topic of the piece is? But then what does the author want you to know about the topic of the piece? And then I want you to write a simple sentence. I think the main idea of this paragraph is. So, like I said, I'm going to show you 3 examples, and you have to write a sentence after each one. I think the main idea of this passage is. So, summarize each passage in one sentence. What's the main idea? Write an appropriate title for the passage. That's another way to think about it. Your title should relate to the main idea of the text. So here we go. Here's example 1. Let me give you a minute to read it and think about it. Okay, good job on example number 1. Now let's move on to example number 2. So remember, think about the main idea, write down your main idea sentence. Here it is. All right, great job on example 2. One final example, think about the main idea of this passage and write down your sentence on your notes.